Hello all, and welcome to another episode of the Market Pulse presented by SmartTouch. I am your host, Aaron Fichera, and today I have a great guest with us, Ben Bollman of Zonda. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, for those that don't know Ben is basically the Zonda Central Texas guru. Anything that's going on with Central Texas, he is the man for when it comes to data, and that is going to be the crux of today's discussion, which is going to around the ASA corridor, or the Austin-San Antonio corridor, which is rapidly growing, as you can see in New Braunfels, which has had a 50% population growth since 2010. This is a growing area and a growing leg, part of the Texas Triangle. But before jumping into the nitty-gritty details, Ben, I love giving my guests a chance. How did you become the Central Texas guru at Zonda?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been here with Zonda for going on almost 5 years. Up in Seattle is where I started, and I was getting my master's of science in real estate from the University of Washington, and I'd finished that up about a year ago. And I was actually complaining to my boss about how poorly the market was doing up there for housing. And he said, "Had you thought about coming down to Austin? It's the third largest market in the U.S. and we'd love to have you down here if you're willing to move." So came down and jumped in head first. But yeah, I was very excited for the opportunity. As a lot of Texas folk know, this is where things are happening. So
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity to come down. But yeah.
No, I mean, you're striking while the iron's hot. I mean, I've been very bullish, and I know we've talked about being bullish on not only the Texas Triangle, but Central Texas in general, which is, you're the expert in that. With today's episode being a focus on ASA, the Austin San Antonio metropolitan area, which would extend from, the Austin proper, we'll say from Georgetown, Pflugerville, all the way through South Austin, those inner cities, as well as down to San Antonio, Medina County. As we can see in other parts of Texas, the DFW metropolitan area, over time, these things form into just a giant metropolitan area. And it's just slowly growing that way, especially on the 35 corridor. So, Ben, as given the context, why are you so bullish on the ASA corridor?
Yeah, couple things. The business-friendly environment of Texas is just drawing a lot of folks here. So overall, business wants to be here, and that's the precursor to housing, right? They need to know that businesses and people are going to be coming in, and so that's creating a lot of jobs. We're forecasting by 2030 that Austin and San Antonio combined is going to have the highest job growth in the nation. A little over 14%, I believe. And then we're also forecasted to have the highest high-income job growth by 2030 as well, outpacing Dallas and Houston, by a large margin, especially if you're combining the metros. The metros individually will actually be outpacing those other markets, but when you combine them together, Austin and San Antonio, it really just is the number one spot in the U.S. For job growth. So, and there's a couple of things. I think the business-friendly environment, it's a relatively low cost of living here. If you think about, maybe, I say this to Austinites and they're like, "What are you talking about? It's gone up so much."
Yeah.
But relative to other places throughout the country, it's relatively.
Special Seattle too.
Seattle. You're looking at San Francisco, California in general, New York. So a lot of these other places are just much more expensive. And if you're willing to drive to qualify, I mean, you could be up in Leander and get a house for under $300,000. Like, that's not even an option in most of the markets I just mentioned throughout the US. Like, you're not even getting a studio apartment for $300,000. So, there's that.
Well, and do you still see that type of migration coming from those states because of the business and just the cost of living? I know, a decade ago, that was the big, push and, don't California my Texas. And then there was that whole op-ed piece of people going back and saying, "Oh, I hate Texas. I hate the weather." But, what's really going on the ground?
I From everything that I see, it is happening. It's just not in the kind of like that boom fashion. It's more of a manageable migration. I think getting H-1B visa workers back would be a big boon for companies like Apple. I know that Apple specifically is pushing more of their employees, to come to Austin over having them work in California. So if they want to live here, there's also a lot of specialized manufacturing that's popping up here because so John Deere, for example, up in Taylor has a specialized autonomous robotics arm, their R&D uh, office, I guess, is up there. And then you have just companies like Firefly, which is rocket ships. And then you have all the terafab stuff through Elon. So there's just a lot going on. And once you draw the big boys with all of that kind of talent, the little smaller startups, also ancillary companies that need to be near those talent pools start growing as well.
Well, to that point, that's everyone knows the big headlines, right? You can't go to a cocktail party without, oh, in Taylor, Texas, Samsung's growing a plant, or Tesla's creating a boom town out in Bastrop. We got SpaceX. But I was just reading and researching too, but getting back to that corridor. But you see places like Lockhart, San Marcos. I know out in Lockhart there's it's Prototown or something to that effect, where they're really pushing for that type of high fabrication, high professional income jobs. And I don't know if there's anything that, you know, maybe you may have insight into that maybe the audience doesn't, past the headlines of Samsung and SpaceX. Are there pockets that, industries that we may want, like just like John Deere? Is there stuff that, we don't know about that
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh, okay.
One of the interesting ones, and it's actually related to housing. I'm sure we've all heard of Icon in our industry, but there's a lot of others that are popping up related to that, like American Housing Corporation or Bob's Containers. And so, like, even just those kind of prefab modular housing stuff, the Prototown is a great example of, just innovative, tech forward thinking fabrication. And, it land is relatively inexpensive here, and you can build a big factory and for a relatively affordable cost here. And these things do require space. All of the things that we're kind of talking about require lots of land and space. I mean, I don't want to really go down the data center road. We'll see how all that shakes out, if as many are going to get built here as needed. But I think there's just a strong industrial core here. Also, San Antonio, with its strong military
Yeah. Lackland.
presence,
Yep.
is going to drive a lot of folks, subcontractors, people that are providing goods to the military. I mean, they just increased the military budget by, I think, another 500 billion, not to get political or whatever. That is just what it is. And that's going to drive
No, and
jobs. And
builders
that's
are,
going to,
yeah, and builders are adapted to it. We can see it out in Medina, where, I mean, it's within 15 miles of the Air Force Base because of that rapid growth.
Yep. And then also, like, down in San Antonio, you really get a quality, affordable product for homes. So you have a lot of people that are, maybe Austin is getting too much for them. I actually have a friend coworker that just moved from Austin to San Antonio. He loves it. So
Yeah, there's that
I
there's
guess
that nice Spanish charm in San
yeah,
Antonio. It's a different
he
vibe.
loves it. Yeah. So it's just a different vibe. It's different city, but at the same time, it's all melding into one. I remember vividly the first time I drove from Austin to San Antonio. I was expecting to leave Austin and then just fields with cows. And then I just saw all this development happening, and then all of a sudden I'm in San Antonio an hour and a half later, 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, it was just kind of eye-opening for someone that wasn't from here to just see how much development. I mean, I just saw in the Business Journal down in Hayes County, they're going to be building 6,000 new homes.
Yeah.
So a new master plan development's going in down there. It's been in the works for a while, but it's finally coming to fruition. San Marcos, Seguin, all these kind of tertiary smaller towns are now kind of bedroom communities of the major metro.
Well, to that point, I mean, how are you seeing builders and developers adapt to these changes? And, what data points do you think they should be, looking at, or you think that they're getting wrong at this point?
I don't think they're really getting anything wrong per se. I think it's a lot of trial and error, and I think at the end of the day, it's not even coming down to price as much as perceived value. And I think the more that builders can highlight their value proposition and be transparent with the pricing, that will win over the buyers in the end. And I think they're essentially getting back to basics. I wasn't here for this crazy COVID run up, but it was so busy in these sales offices that they just needed a warm body and they were just kind of taking orders.
Yeah.
Now it's like, what does this community have to offer? What are the buyers wanting out of these communities? And really getting kind of back to basics is what, and being transparent on the pricing, I think is the most heavily emphasized piece that I see my clients focusing on
Well,
right now.
and drilling down a little bit more, because I know you said, um, getting to Leander around the 300s, or, putting those value propositions. Are there data points that you're seeing with your builder clients that are saying, okay, not that they're doing it right or wrong, but they're figuring out they're figuring they've got the sweet spot. They got the price
Yeah.
discovery. They figured out the market fit. What can you tell us that? Who's got it
The
right?
the highest um, kind of like sales per month segmented by price in Austin is that 350 to 450 range. If you can get in that range, you're you're selling definitely over 3 homes a month, which is typically what home builders are underwriting at.
Yep.
If you're at the top end, you're still doing fine because they're less price conscious buyer at the high end, so or interest rate sensitive. So they're probably selling another home. They have a larger down payment. So it's the move up home builders in the middle that are really getting squeezed because their buyers are kind of locked in maybe at a lower rate and they still don't feel comfortable. From what I hear though, or what I've been seeing, I mean, you can get, yeah, it's not going to be 2.5%. Like maybe some people got locked in during COVID, but
Oh, but you can bring it
you're
down
in
to
the
around
you're
sub
in the
four.
fours. Yeah,
Yeah.
sub four for sure.
Yeah.
But then down in San Antonio, the largest market by price or the most closings is sub 300. So they have homes down there that are in selling, sub 300 range. So and I'm not even talking about townhomes. Like this is actual like single family
Yeah.
detached homes. So, it goes back to the, drive till you qualify. But at the same time, I think a strong brand recognition, being able to connect with your having your sales consultants fully understand, who their target client is and being able to differentiate between the other home builders in the community is really what most of my clients are getting back to. And then obviously going back and potentially reworking some forward commitments to manage kind of their future pipeline with developers are probably the top things that are going on in the market. But to that point, I
Yeah.
think it's really it's really we've had a drawdown of probably about 20% from the highs, I want to say, maybe 30% from the highs of COVID. And, you know, we're still up another
Yeah.
20%. So like it just depends on like what your time frame is if you feel like you got a good deal or not, kind of depends on when you bought your house. You know, if it was 2017, you're probably feeling pretty good. If it was, during COVID, you're probably a little nervous. But, the benefit goes back to saying like the beautiful thing about Texas and this market in general is they encourage development and growth. Coming from a place like on the West Coast or places where the government's much more heavy-handed in terms of entitlements, and their pricing is still extremely expensive because it's a supply demand issue. There's just not enough supply because they aren't able to build it fast enough. Whereas here, it's so encouraged that, the building happens very, very quickly, which allows for opportunities for you to get in at a good deal at a certain
Well,
rate.
I know for a lot of builder clients, and a lot of the barrier was that COVID times, and especially on the land acquisition side, where people were holding out for those kind of COVID prices. Are you seeing land move a little bit more faster than a couple of years ago, or is there still kind of
That is
this?
that is one thing that hasn't really changed is land prices, from what I heard, have not really come down.
Really?
They a lot of the people that have the land, maybe it's generational, family owned, they don't really need to sell it if they don't want to sell it. And they're holding an LOI from COVID times when, you know, they got a valuation that was kind of, out of the realm of
Yeah,
possibilities today.
it's Mickey Mouse
Um,
now. It doesn't exist. Like,
exactly. Yeah. So I think overall land prices haven't really come down. What we have seen a lot of our developers being working a lot more with the home builders on those forward commitments to be able to
and
move the ball
that was
forward.
going to be my next question is, where do you see the builders adapting and trying to, make those margins meet? Is it going to be on the forward commitments? Is it going to be on some of the features, or, scaling back some of the amenities? What are you seeing as kind of a trend or ways for?
So the buyers are kind of wanting everything right now because they know they're kind of holding the cards.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of home builders have gotten away from trying to offer, you get $20,000 on a rate buy down, plus you get 50,000 on improvements and all that. I think they're just saying, okay, now you get 70 grand, you spend it where you want to spend it. Like, I'm not sitting here muddying the waters with that. Um, I think forward commitments, are becoming a, you know, the developers are obviously working more with them. I think the margins are there. The thing that I guess like what we look at is like, are you effectively pricing your lots at the lot level? Where are you leaving money on the table? A lot of the things that I see, builders have traditionally been really good at buying land. And then when it comes to selling, it's like we want pace. They haven't always been the best at like really staying on top of their potential profit centers of lot premiums, in my
Mm,
opinion. I think, they'll do across the board, like, hey, $5,000 across the board, we're just cutting everything because it's easy, right? They got a
yeah.
lot of other things going on. But if you have your most desirable lot and do with your most desirable floor plan, why would you cut it by 5 grand? That's going to sell itself.
Mm.
Go cut the stuff in the middle, like maybe the interior or less desirable lots. And I think that's what builders are getting back to, is like being more strategic right now about
Provide a
where.
differentiation rather than just kind of give the baby the milk, and, at
Exactly.
least show a
Yeah,
value proposition.
exactly. So being able to really identify where the value lies for them in that community. And you have to remember, like, these builders maybe bought this land 2 years ago
Mm.
and they're like, wait, why did we buy this in the first place? Like, right? You
Yeah.
kind of get, there's so much that's gone on. They're like, wait, why did I buy this? So it's getting reacquainted with the site, walking it, understanding, okay, where are the premiums happening? And going back to what's important to our buyer. For example, cultural buyers have really died down quite a bit just because of H-1B. So we don't have those same. So if you're relying on H-1B visa people as your pipeline, you're having to pivot to something else now. Like, what
Mm.
is that thing? And that's almost an identity crisis in some communities for them,
Well,
right?
definitely for
As
the
a builder.
H-1B. Yeah. For, you're building a product that's, potentially with the H-1B is multi-generational, especially when you have the Southeast Asian demographic, to now you don't have that buyer. So, are you do they have nim- are they nimble enough to, resize and put in a new product to market?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that also to that point, like the Home Act that passed here in Austin, allowing for smaller, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. Now we're on phase two.
footprints.
Yeah.
Yep. So like allowing for smaller footprints on lot sizes, and what can you fit on there, and all of that goes back to affordability, attainability, and that I think just that's also what makes ASA such a dynamic market. Is like there is something for everyone here. And I
Yeah.
really do like that. Like, whereas, up in Seattle or on the West Coast or in these major metropolitans and other places, you it's really like either you're at the top or you're at the bottom. There's not a lot in the middle. Whereas here you get a lot in the middle.
Well, I know we can do a whole nother section on just the ancillary because you got the corridor, which can fit all the young professionals from all echelons of a socio-demographic, different, high manufacturing down to service, down to, financial institutions, and so forth. But then you go out west, you hit Bernie, Canyon Lake, New Braunfels, Tripping Springs, Bee Caves, Kyle's even growing to be catering to that kind of entryway into the hill country. And I mean, from that perspective, do you still see active adults and retirees making up a good chunk of the movement in this area?
Yeah. I think especially as younger professionals move here, um, the baby chaser generation, the grandparents,
Yep.
then they have the flexibility to have a second home. If it's, affordable enough. And for most, if you're coming from California, you have enough equity in this house that you bought in the 80s that you could buy a
Yeah.
$200,000 house here and be fine, right? Maybe it's a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom, in a 55 plus community. Um, I also think, the other interesting thing that we have here too is we're getting a larger BTR presence. And after they just passed that legislation
Yeah.
on the national level.
The 21st Century Road Act. Yeah.
Yep. So, it seems like that's not going to impact BTR as much as initially thought. So, it's kind of like everyone's getting back into the game on that
Well,
front when they paused.
well,
So
to that point, and I know it's a little bit off, but the rise of BTR, you know, previously, it's been around 10%. I mean, from what we've seen in, the whole housing, but now it's becoming more and more predominant. I've talked to builders and say, oh, yeah, they tried BTR back in the 80s or 90s and it was kind of niche and it never took off anywhere. This time it seems a bit different. I don't know how you feel about it or if you can kind of provide some insight on um, BTR being built to rent for, apologies for
it's
using acronyms,
it's
but
it's going to be the fastest segment in the future, like going forward. I think the largest growing. I mean, it's starting off kind of from infancy, so of course, even if it has, you know,
oh,
if it
yeah,
goes from
yeah. I mean,
100 to 200 units, that's a
well,
100%
when
gain.
you
But
look at like Berkshire Hathaway acquiring Taylor Morrison, it just seems like those, that
well, I think there's a lot
efficiency of
of different
scales.
things are going on. I think the affordability thing is there. I mean, I own homes, I have rentals myself. I'm currently renting, and living, and I have two young children and a dog, and living in a 2 bedroom apartment, on the second floor at a luxury place. It would have been nice in my 20s, late 20s, early
Yeah.
30s. But in this stage, I would much rather have a house with a yard or some form
Some
of,
sense of stability.
yeah, a little bit. Not like I'm just packed in here into this thing. So, and I think a lot more people are also seeing the benefits of like flexibility of renting. They value flexibility over having this, because we change jobs a lot quicker these days, than previous generations. Um, they don't know if they're going to have kids. Like I have a lot of friends that are basically going to say like, no, they're in their 40s. They're like, we're good. We're not going to have kids. So maybe, but they still want a townhouse. Maybe they just want more space. They both work from home. They want an office or they want an extra bedroom for friends that come stay with them. But they don't necessarily want like just a 2-bedroom apartment. So I think there's just a lot of demographical changes that are driving the BTR market. And some of that is related to also family conditions. Like maybe they just feel like they're priced out of getting a home, but they're having a baby and they want extra space. And so that's what they're going to do. I mean, I see a lot of interesting things online about, the benefits of the stock market over buying a house. Like
Yeah.
that's now a common topic of conversation. Like, should I just put my money in the stock market instead of getting a house? I think that's a little bit more risky than what I would do, but personally. But for a lot of people, they want the
I typically
flexibility.
like to err on the side of the basic necessities: food, water, shelter. Solve those first.
Yeah, exactly. But for some people, they're just like whatever. We don't mind. So I think there's just a lot of demographical changes that are happening that are going to continue driving BTR. And Texas specifically has a lot of things going for it that are driving more BTR here than other places. The land is relatively affordable, and the timeline to get something built is relatively fast, which time value of money is the biggest thing in a lot of these projects. So the faster you can get them up with the cheapest possible land price, you're probably going to build in those places. So, and with the population growth. So that's what we have here too.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
and I think as we both kind of point out, it all leads to just a massive explosion. I mean, we've already, like I was saying at the beginning with New Braunfels, I was looking at it in 2010. Since 2010, it's doubled its population. So that's just one center within that corridor. So uh, extremely bullish.
Yeah. I mean, every single not every single one, but a lot of master plan communities that I see that are being developed now have their own schools. Like
Mhm.
that, I mean, they're basically building towns, they're
Yes.
building small cities. And so the more of that's going to occur is they're just towns are going to be popping up everywhere throughout Central Texas, and it's going to be pretty remarkable what happens. So I think overall between the affordability thing here, it's just going to continue um, to happen. That we just continue to get bigger and bigger and build more and more. So I think it'll be exciting to say the least. But I think the only one thing that coming from Seattle, the one thing I would little bit be concerned about is this water thing. So
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because you brought up data centers and it's a massive growth. I know here in Hayes County, that's been the big, or down the way in Hayes County has been a huge barrier is water. And then you get reports of having to then developers buy into the city water and the residents having to pay $200-300 more on their bill. So what's from your side, what's how do we deal with the water situation?
I've been going to a lot of just panel discussions with local city managers, municipal districts, judges, county judges talking about water. And there's an overarching theme that, you know, we're doing there is water in other jurisdictions in Texas, though they really value that. So getting it here could be a problem because they don't want to give it up themselves in their other jurisdictions. Um, there's a lot of you know water treatment discussion, and we're going from
Desalination.
desalination from the ocean. I mean, honestly, they need to come up with a better marketing term for it, but toilet to tap, like just cleaning the
Yeah,
water,
water treatment centers and
water
yeah.
treatment centers, but like not just for like watering our grass. Like
Mhm.
that's going to be the drinking water. So, um, and the interesting thing that I heard recently, I think it was in Williamson County, it's something like 70% of the water usage there is for irrigation, which, it's hard to kind of believe, but, people are, it's hard to tell someone in Texas not to do something, right? Hey, don't
Yeah,
water
yeah.
your lawn. You're like, hey, I like my lawn, so I want to water it and I'm paying for it. So, let me water my lawn.
Mm.
Um, so I think there's going to be some probably more discussion around, should we give incentives to make
As I was saying,
drought resistant,
yeah, or
you know,
zero-scaping and find
zero
ways to say,
scaping?
hey, you invest this amount, you can get a tax break, similar to what they did with, clean energy and solar panels a decade
Yeah.
ago.
And I think, especially given, and if you can make it something lasting on your taxes here, that's been one of the things that's surprising to me is kind of the tax, your property taxes here, coming from,
That's how they get
which
us here.
is, I
Yeah.
know you got it.
We don't have the
They
state
get you
income tax,
somewhere.
but they sure as hell got a property tax.
Yeah, they get it regardless. It's just where they
Mm.
get it. So, but yeah, so like if they could do something, if you did a zero scape lawn, and you got proof of that, and like that was like a residual thing that you lowered your tax bill year over year, I think a lot more people would probably get really interested in that, just because that is something that's constantly kind of top of mind for people.
Well, I think too, and getting to your point about, viewing now housing as an investment and, financial vehicle. If this is,
Yeah,
if this is the game, I don't think we're going to win people on, hugging a tree and being empathetic. Now we got to hit them where it hurts in their pocketbook or incentivize them around that.
yeah, yeah, and also, I think having I think with the grid piece, with going back to the data centers talk, like, you know, before I moved here, all I heard was how fragile the infrastructure is here from a grid perspective. I haven't personally experienced it, so that's nice. But I think solar, getting bigger into solar again on actual houses would be cool. I don't know really anything about that, but it just seems like something that should, you know, be more pushed here. And maybe that is something that the home builders could offer. I don't know. I've never seen that done, but like maybe that's an incentive. Um, Especially with Tesla being here. I think they have Tesla roofs. Like, so get out there,
Yeah.
partner with them. Uh, do it
Yeah.
in your own
There's
backyard.
definitely a greater need for that public private partnership.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's really going. These master plan communities are essentially public private partnerships at the end of the
Yeah.
day. Um, And there's some talk about, annexation and who has the rights to annex into a city or not annex and all of that kind of stuff. And we'll leave that to the legislatures to figure that stuff out, the politicians. But,
Yeah.
I think as I heard something like Williamson County and just their ETJ is like, I think 180,000 people or something like that, just in the ETJ. So like that's a lot of need of resources in unincorporated, aspects of the county.
Yeah.
And so, Judge Snell has a lot on his plate managing a lot of that kind of stuff. Whereas just the city leaders are trying to, manage the growth that they've had in Georgetown and Round Rock and all of that, right? And then all the other things that are coming along with it. And so I think, it's got to be a community push from all aspects, public, private, anyone who will listen, get
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah. It's a very rare that we have a bipartisan bill unanimously. So if you got both of these parties coming together, it's something serious need to be talked about, especially with the legislation.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's big news, and as we're kind of unwinding down to our show, Zonda. I want to give you the forum. I know you can't give as much. I know there's things in the works, big news, but what's going
Yeah.
on? What's anything coming up this second half of the year that you want the audience to be aware of, or things that they
Um,
can reach out about?
yeah. As you kind of mentioned it, can't really disclose too much right now, but big things are happening. Just imagine us being able to do what we do, but on overdrive. Essentially, is how I
Yeah.
would describe it, and creating a lot of new tools and data sources for all ranges of folks. Um, the other thing
I
I
was
would
just gonna
say,
say, without giving
yeah,
names,
yeah,
coming from the commercial world and having that name will be named unnamed just for sake,
yeah,
and you guys combining, game changer. I mean,
yeah. It's
we're already going to that live, work, play, mixed use. The growing up, there's
yeah,
always commercial residence. We can't residential. We can't, industrials, redheaded stepchild. But now
yeah.
it's
Well,
all combined.
we're the preeminent, data provider servicing the new home construction, and it's become so sophisticated these days that it truly is actually aligning more with commercial anyways. I mean, we're talking billions and billions of dollars transacted every day.
Yeah,
It's just we're serving, a consumer, direct to consumer customer. Our customers are servicing the
yeah.
consumers, rather than business to business. But
As we
um,
talked about today, I mean, they go hand in glove, right? The businesses that you mentioned and the
yeah,
growth of like Tesla and those headquarters coming in, the commercial
yeah,
affects the
yeah,
residential.
yeah. And I think what we've identified too is like some exciting stuff is like we're creating new like workflow tools to help as we recognize that our clients are looking for ways to utilize technology better, lean out their enterprise, and maximize, their efforts. We're creating a number of very unique and specialized tools to help them in their day to day life. Be able to better manage their businesses. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most excited about is that not only is it the data, but now we're giving our clients the tools to actually not have to sit there all day analyzing data. It's like, okay, let's actually make this actionable now, like in the moment. So we're basically taking out a big chunk of the process to allow them to be more nimble and accurate with their decision making. So, yeah.
Well, outside of those big news, anything around Zonda event wise, things coming up that you're going to be attending.
Yeah, we have our future place up in Dallas.
Yeah,
So that is all around placemaking. I would strongly encourage anyone to that is in that space, please attend. It's an excellent event. It's at the Las Colinas Ritz Carlton in Dallas or
and that's coming up
area.
here. That's
September.
coming up September. Yeah.
September. Yep. So once everyone's back from summer vacation, drive on up to Dallas, and we'll have a great time at the Ritz.
Oh, and it's a
Um,
beautiful facility too. And if you can play some golf,
Oh yeah, yeah. That is
I'd highly recommend.
ideal. That's ideal. That's where deals get done is on that golf course. So, uh,
Yeah, I mean,
we got that. We also have just our webinars. Our events page has a bunch of great stuff. We have if you're watching this, you didn't attend our Deal Makers event here in Austin earlier this year. We're going to be having it again next year. We had a wonderful turnout, panel discussions hosted by Tim Sullivan, our head of advisory, and Ali Wolf,
it's great.
wonderful
Those two.
economists.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Brian as well spoke here at the local level. I mean,
yeah.
they got great.
So
Allie's
they're
always great to
very
hear.
dynamic. Yeah, very dynamic, very engaging. We get really great panelists. Thanks to our events team for doing that, and makes my job easier. Uh,
Yeah,
I can just take credit for their work.
yeah. You just come in. It's like everyone's feeling
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So yeah, but overall, I'm here locally. So if you want to, reach out to me, feel free. I'm more than happy to grab coffee or lunch at any time. And yeah, just chat about the market. As you can tell, I love this stuff. So
Yeah.
it's great.
And as we wrap up today's show, I always like to, ask, kind of more of a shout to young professionals. And if you had a chance to give one piece of advice to a young professional, or those that are just jumping into the home building industry in general, what advice would you give them?
It's actually two. Be adaptable and outwork everyone. That's the best thing. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but if you can outwork them and show that value, people will take that over brains any day. So it worked for me. Definitely not the smartest guy in the room. So.
Hey, listen, I'm in the same boat. Will over skill, man. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's a great way of putting it. I haven't heard that one. That's wonderful. Yeah. So that's my advice. Just wake up and take the day on and leave it out on the field.
and what keeps me going are these conversations. So I appreciate it. And thank you for taking time today, sir.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you around town. Thanks, man.
All right. And for those that are
Bye.
listening, thank you again for taking some time, and we hope to see you again next time on the Market Pulse. Have a great day.